What is going on, Concussion Discussion listeners? How are you guys? I'm doing pretty well. It is Wednesday, August 1st. So we've got UFC 227 coming up on Saturday. Not a great card. Honestly, not even really a good card at all, aside from the co-main and main event. I think that really you have two what should be co-headliners on different cards with one big fight. But, the Gus Rockhold fight and Gus Ozdemir fight fell through. So we'll get into UFC 227. Definitely got to talk about the fights in Calgary, UFC on Fox 30. We're going to get into the rating situation, the definite problem that the UFC has right now with the viewership, and do a quick breakdown of that. But I hope you guys had a good week last week, good weekend, and I hope you're enjoying your week thus far. I actually went to Dallas to go see my mom, stepdad, and my three stepbrothers out there. Good trip. It was hot as balls. So I only packed like 2 pair of shorts, and I'm not kidding. So when we landed, I'm checking the weather, and I meant to say this in my head. Said it out loud. I just went, fuck! And this is just when the plane lands, so everyone's like quiet, just waiting to get their bags. So they all stare at me, of course, like, what's wrong with this guy just cursing incoherent things with children in the plane? Sorry for that. But instead of just saying, oh, sorry, I just looked at him and said, it's hot here. And they're like, yeah, no shit. You're in Dallas, Texas, you dummy. So that was fun. Anyway, so let's just get right into UFC on Fox 30, Calgary. So a few things to talk about, a few things to highlight. I want to talk Dustin Ortiz. That was a big knockout. That was a great knockout. So shout out to Dustin. We've been going back and forth on Instagram trying to get something set up with an interview. But I'm a huge fan of that guy. He got the first round head kick KO, and he is also the owner of the fastest knockout in UFC flyweight history. I believe that was 14 seconds. So good to see him get a win. He was ranked number 9 going into that fight. He was an underdog too, which I thought was weird. So, if you're a betting person, definitely put your money on Dustin. It seems like he's always the underdog, which I do not understand. So he got a good win. And then Joanna versus Tecia Torres. Not a whole lot to say about this fight. In my opinion, it was a lot of what I expected would happen. I thought that Joanna's striking is it's too good. It's too good. And Tecia is not one to rely on wrestling, but what I will say, and I did bring this up, is that Tecia being the smaller frame, but small as in height, but she's built frame. She was having some success early, leaning on Joanna against the cage, probably hoping to really tire Joanna out, but at the end of the day, Joanna trains with some of the best people in the world. Probably my pick for the best camp in the world. So she's been through that. She knows how to face that, how to come back, how to avoid it coming into the later rounds. So Tecia had some success early, but putting Joanna up against the cage, but not much from there. And Joanna just kind of did what Joanna does. The post-fight, if you watch the post-fight interviews at the Fox desk, it was weird. She still can't accept those losses from Rose Namajunas, which is very, very bothersome. Hey, you lost the fights, whatever. Good to see her get a win. She's one of my favorite fighters. She's my favorite female fighter. But, as a fan, it's definitely a bit frustrating to see that. So, Dana said that, Jessica Andrade, someone will definitely fight for the title before Joanna, because that fight's obviously a tough sell after Rose knocked her out and then beat her in a unanimous decision in the second fight. So you can't throw Joanna right back in there. So, I would say Joanna probably waits it out, see how the Rose Namajunas-Jessica Andrade fight plays out. I actually like Jessica Andrade in that fight a lot to beat Rose Namajunas, and Joanna's already beat Jessica Andrade. So, I think she waits it out, maybe banks on that Jessica Andrade, winning that fight, and then comes back with against a fighter that she's already beaten very convincingly. So this is what I think is next for Joanna. And the weird thing about this whole card, and this is just for Tisha right now, and I'll get into it with some of the other fighters that were on the card. So with Tisha Torres, it's a very weird situation because she was ranked number 5 in the world coming into this fight. And it's not that she looked terrible. It's not that she got completely outclassed. She did have some success. We got to give her that. But I don't know what the UFC is going to do with her, in the sense that when you're ranked number 5 in the world and you lose to a number 1, you stepped up in huge competition. You're not going to fall in the rankings too much, right? That just doesn't make sense. So Tisha Torres, number 5. Carla Esparza's number 6. She's booked. Michelle Waterson, I don't think, has a fight. She's number 7. That could be a fun fight. Maybe Felice Herrig. Tatiana Suarez already has a fight. Maybe Courtney Casey. She's going to have to fight down. I don't see her. She's not going to fight up after losing that fight. So she's going to have to fight down, but I don't see her losing her ranking much at all. Now let's get into Betch Correia. Unhappy with UFC 220. Oh, yeah, she got removed from UFC 227. Oh, no. I'm not going to buy it now because Betch is out. I don't care. That card is such crap, really. Oh, no, you can't do... Excuse me. That's what I had to look that up for a second. No, you can't do Michelle Waterson versus Tisha Torres because they just fought. So before she lost to Joanna and then lost to Jessica Andrade, she beat Michelle Waterson in a decision. So, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, like I said, I don't know what's next for her. She's going to have to fight down in the rankings, but it's very risky when you have someone of that caliber to put them up against someone that's significantly lower ranked because it's a big risk. But I digress. So, done talking about that. Jose Aldo versus Jeremy Stephens. So, this is a big one. Jose Aldo has lost his last 2 to Max Holloway. So, he had the Conor fight, lost that, got knocked out in 13 seconds. And then he fights Frankie Edgar at UFC 200, wins via unanimous decision. He looked like Jose Aldo to win the interim title. Then he fights, then he has the 2 Max fights. He loses both via TKO. So a lot of people, including myself, were thinking, is it the tough competition that Jose Aldo has had his last 4 or 5 that he hasn't looked great in, or is it that just these guys, the Max Holloways, the Conors, are just that damn good? And I thought that it was more of the downfall of Jose Aldo. Look, he's a little bit older in fight years. He's been fighting since he was 18. He's been a world champion since he was very young. And I just thought that he's old in fight years, and Jeremy Stephens is going to go in there and do work. Jeremy Stephens went in there and fought the fight that he had to if he wanted to beat Jose. He was pressuring him, moving forward. You don't want to let Jose get on the outside and then start a kickboxing match. That's not going to get you anywhere with Aldo. He's going to piece you up. He's too technical. He's too smart. He's too much of a veteran. So Jeremy Stephens looked good in the beginning, and then Jose Aldo threw that hook to the body and dropped Jeremy, and then finished him on the ground. It's not that Jeremy's not tough; it's that your body, whenever you get hit like that, really does shut down. So, it sucks to see Jeremy Stephens lose because he was on a 3-fight winning streak. He really has fought, some of the best in the world. He's fought Jose. He's fought Frankie. He's fought a lot of really tough guys. He fought an over-ranked Josh Emmett, which got him his number 4 ranking, in my opinion. But, it's a kind of the same story with Jeremy Stephens. I hope he's a world champ someday because he's definitely exciting to watch. He's powerful. He's explosive. But it seems like every time he gets put in these situations to where he's on the cusp of title contention, he can't get it done. And it's a bummer. But, when you're fighting a guy like Jose, I mean, it's not like he lost to an unranked guy or, number 11, number 12 guy. He lost to the greatest featherweight of all time, Jose Aldo. But this is a weird one. Again, very, very weird situation in that bantamweight division. It's that featherweight division. It's very odd because you have the whole Max Holloway situation, the champion who's, he's got pulled out of his last 3 fights because of injuries, but he's still the champion. Honestly, I think you should strip him. You have Brian Ortega there, but you can't do Ortega versus Frankie because Ortega already knocked him out. Maybe you could have done Jeremy Stevens versus Brian Ortega, which they tried to do. Yeah, I don't know where Jose really fits in that situation. Now, if Max falls out again or they do strip him because of another injury, then perhaps you could do Aldo versus Brian Ortega, potentially. I don't know who's next. Don't want to see Frankie versus Jose 3 because both times they fought, it was very hard to find moments there that Frankie had any success, and I'm a huge Frankie Edgar fan, but Jose is just that damn good. So I don't want to see that. So we'll see. Jeremy Stevens probably drops maybe 2 or 3 spots and probably fights down. I hope the UFC keeps that guy's stock up. I don't want to see him fight terrible matchups just yet because he did win 3 in a row and just happened to lose to Jose Aldo. So I hope they keep his stock up. Good for Aldo. Good to see Jose Aldo get a win. He super deserves it. And, hopefully we see Jeremy Stevens get a favorable matchup. Now moving on to the main event, Eddie Alvarez, Dustin Poirier. This fight went exactly as I thought it would, as I stated last episode. What I didn't think that there would be was further controversy. So what happens is the first round, much like the first fight, in the first round, Dustin Poirier starts piecing up Eddie Alvarez. Very technical, very crisp boxing. He doesn't get crazy. He takes his time. And Eddie just looked like Eddie. He looked hesitant, but always, throwing shots that, once he misses with the shot, you go, oh my God, that could have ended the fight. Could have. He does have that power if you look back at the Dos Anjos fight. Very hesitant. And then they go into the second round. Again, much like the first fight, second round. Dustin Poirier putting it on him. He's got Eddie hurt. Then the change of the fight really happened. Eddie landed a shot or two, coming back, and then got Dustin down. Now, here we are. Eddie has mounted Dustin Poirier. And, getting a full mount on a guy like Dustin is no easy feat. Definitely not. And Dustin his back is up against the cage, but Eddie's got him in full mount. So a few things here, and this is my opinion. Everyone freaks out because eventually they got stood up, and that's where Dustin ended up ending the fight. Yes, was it a dominant position? Absolutely. Anytime you have a guy like Dustin Poirier, and you've mounted him, yes, definitely a dominant position. But when you're on the bottom and you're against the cage like that, I'm not saying it's an advantageous position. All I'm saying is that it's not nearly as dangerous as being completely mounted in the sense of back on the mat and then being mounted. Because when your back's on the mat and your opponent's on top of you, he has a lot more room to land big punches, big shots, and advanced positions if he or she so choose. So, I'm reading a lot of articles, headlines, listening to a lot of opinions, talking about the weird stand-up because it was such a dominant position. It was a dominant position, but it's not like he had him in a crucifix and was laying down huge elbows, and then all of a sudden Mark Goddard said, you got to get up. No, that's not what happened. So, they're in that position. That's the picture. Eddie Alvarez lands a 12-6 elbow, which is illegal. It does not land at Dustin's head. Dustin says, hey, I'm fine, to Mark Goddard once he steps in. But the fact of the matter is, and we can go back and forth on this all day, but I'm very passionate about this. It landed on the shoulder, okay? Fine. No harm done. But you can't say no harm, no foul, because that strike is absolutely a foul. So people are giving Mark Goddard crap because he stood the fighters up because that was an illegal strike. But people are saying, well, it didn't hit Dustin in the head. Okay, fine. Guess what happens if Mark Goddard or any other referee in that octagon lets Eddie keep throwing those elbows? You don't just, a guy like Eddie Alvarez, with how dominant his ground game can be when he decides to play that game, he's not just throwing one shot at a time. He's going to keep throwing that elbow. And guess what happens? If you keep throwing it, one of them is bound to land. At least one of them, which is an illegal strike. We can argue about whether it should or should not be illegal all day, but let's say he lands that 12-6 elbow, it cuts Dustin up, Eddie wins via TKO because of doctor stoppage. I know I'm playing worst case scenario right now, but it's absurd that people are defending the strike. Now, another thing is the last fight, and I love Eddie Alvarez. I've met him. He's a nice guy, and he's a great fighter. He's one of the best lightweights to ever do it. The last fight, he landed an illegal knee. It didn't look intentional, but it was illegal, and it went to a no contest. He should have been disqualified, and Dustin Poirier should have won that fight. So now you have this fight to where before the 12-6 elbows, you had Dustin Poirier getting Eddie in a very, very, it was a tight guillotine, looked pretty tight, and you have Eddie holding on to the fence to defend. That's illegal. Mark Goddard said, stop, let go of the fence, but at that time, he was already working his way out. And then Eddie also put his fingers, and I didn't see this the first time that I watched the fight, and then I heard it in the post-fight interview, rewatched it, and Eddie has his fingers all the way deep in Dustin Poirier's ear and is pulling his head down. Illegal. And Mark Goddard saw all of this, but he didn't do too much about it. And then there was a 12-6 elbow. I do not think that Eddie Alvarez is a dirty fighter. I say that because I'm biased, because I've watched all of his past fights and he's never done anything like this. To my knowledge, aside from the Dustin Poirier 2 fights, he's never done anything like this. It could be you're in the moment and, he just saw the elbow from his coach, one of the best in the game, Mark Henry, saying, throw the elbow. He was in the moment, so he threw the exact same elbow that Mark said that he should throw. You're in the moment, you're in a fist fight, you're getting punched in the face. Shit happens. But I do question the fingers in the ear type stuff. Eddie is too much of a veteran to think that's okay. But anyway, so Dustin Poirier gets it done, second round. So they stand it back up, and then Dustin goes to work. I think I counted something crazy like 17 unanswered strikes. Eddie threw a few but didn't land any, but I think there was like 17 landed, and was eventually an elbow that put Eddie down, and Mark Goddard called the fight. Now Dustin Poirier, he was ranked number 4. He just beat number 3 Eddie Alvarez. So very interested to see what happens in that lightweight division, man. Some people are talking, do put Tony Ferguson and Dustin Poirier on the same card as the potential Conor-Khabib fight. I know they're talking about the Conor-Khabib fight right now, but I'm not completely sold that's going to happen yet. I know they're aiming for October in Vegas. We'll see how that plays out, because Khabib's, and rightfully so, his demands are going to be high, and rightfully so is Conor's. Which I don't know if the UFC is going to give that to him, which I'll get into in another current event, coming up here. I don't know if they're going to give what they're asking, so we could potentially see a Poirier versus Khabib fight. I definitely think Poirier is the rightful number 1 contender. As far as the Khabib-Tony fight, I do not want to see that immediately because, 1, that fight is fucking cursed. And I'm so sick of getting my hopes up. It's supposed to happen 4 times. Has not happened yet. Especially how it ended up not happening last time. The MMA gods don't want it to happen. And yeah, so possibly you could see that. And I don't want to see Tony fight Khabib that soon, as soon as he's coming out of an injury. I would like him to get healthy, maybe have a tune-up fight, and then fight Khabib. But if that doesn't happen, I'd like to see Dustin. If the Conor fight doesn't happen and they decide that if they side with me saying that Tony and Khabib is cursed, then I wouldn't mind the Dustin Poirier versus Khabib fight. I like Dustin's chances a lot more than most do in that fight. So we'll see where they go from here, where Dustin goes from here. Don't know what Eddie does. Eddie's still going to be ranked high, but I'm telling you right now, the build of fighters and the way fighters, especially in that lightweight division, are made now, he's still going to be a top 10, but I see Eddie fighting a guy that's ranked below the top 10 if he has to fight down. And I think he gets beat by a lot of those guys, if I'm being completely honest. He's tough. He can wrestle his ass off. He can box. He's got power. But his hesitance and the amount of damage that he's taken lately, got knocked out by Conor, got knocked out by Dustin Poirier, almost got knocked out by Poirier the first time, and then took a lot of damage from Justin Gaethje. And he's not a young guy. He's not young. He's been doing this a long time. He's taken a lot of damage. So I'm not saying I want to see Eddie call it quits. It's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying I don't know where he possibly has a lot of high-level success in the UFC following this. And his contract just ended. So hopefully, all of that aside, I hope it doesn't mess with his money. And then out of all that, let's just realize how damn good is Conor McGregor. Look at all those guys. So we'll start, except with the exception of Jeremy Stephens. So one half of the co-main event, you got Jose Aldo. Conor knocked him out in 13 seconds. Then you got the main event. He knocked out Dustin Poirier. Yes, granted, very younger Dustin Poirier. This was at 145. Still knocked him out in one round. And then knocked out Eddie in the second round. All this Khabib stuff, all these potential Khabib fights, I wouldn't mind seeing a Dustin Poirier-Conor McGregor rematch. That'd be a fun one. That would be a fun one. So that covers UFC on Fox 30 in Calgary. Oh, one more thing. Got to talk about, that viewership. The lowest it's ever been for those Fox cards. Which is crazy because for my money, that was the best Fox card they've ever put on. It was stacked. The last three fights, the main, co-main, and then Joanna versus Tisha Torres, all of those fights had number one contendership potential on the line for the title. You never really see that. That was, if there was a belt on the line there, that was legitimate pay-per-view level stuff, in my opinion. That was the best Fox fight night they've put on possibly ever. Maybe definitely top three. And it had the lowest viewership ever. It's a shame. It's an absolute shame. I don't know what to point. Everyone points to oversaturation in the market. Yeah, maybe. There's fights every weekend. There's FS1 fights. There's Fox fights. When there's not those, there's pay-per-views. Then there's Bellator and Ryzen and various kickboxing, and it's there's a lot out there, and I don't. Everyone's pointing to that. I don't know if that's it. I don't know if it's oversaturation. I don't know if it's that the UFC isn't pushing some of these guys enough. I would have pushed that Eddie Dustin fight way more than they did. Maybe it's both. Maybe it's one or the other. Maybe it's something that I haven't thought of yet. I don't know. But regardless, it's a shame, and every MMA fan would, after watching Saturday's fights, everyone would agree with me. So that covers officially UFC on Fox in Calgary. So now let's talk some current events. Let's see what we got going on here. I just saw this Bethe Correia. She's out of UFC 227. Don't care, to be honest. I'm literally just scrolling through news. So I haven't read what Eddie Alvarez had to say on Instagram yet following the loss of Dustin Poirier, but I'm very, very excited, interested, not excited, interested to hear what he has to say. Yeah, so here's another one. This is a big one. Demetrius Johnson talking about he's open to fight, whether it's TJ or Cody, whoever the winner of that is in the main event on Saturday. He's willing to fight either one of them if the money's right. So Demetrius Johnson, for my money, is the best fighter of all time. I've talked about this before in previous episodes to why John Jones isn't in my conversation because of all of his issues as in that greatest of all time talk. Demetrius Johnson definitely is. Maybe with DC, maybe with Georges St. Pierre. It's a toss-up between those three. And this guy, the greatest of all time, is talking about money issues. When's the last time you heard LeBron James or Tom Brady complain about money issues? And I'll wait. Yes, I know. The UFC is not as big as the NBA, the NFL, the MLB. I got it. But also for a company that sold for $4.2 billion, you can afford to pay your fighters, your best fighters. DC, his fight money was $500,000 his last fight. That is pennies compared to the other greatest out there. Don't exactly know what DJ's making, but it ain't a lot. He's making decent money for a fighter, good money for a fighter, but he's not making that Conor, Nate Diaz, that Brock Lesnar, Ronda Rousey money. And I get it. Okay, fine. He's not a draw. Promote the guy more. Promote the guy. He's the greatest of all time. I've seen his promos put on by the UFC. They suck. I've seen promos put together by 11-year-old kids in their YouTube, on their YouTube channel. Hire those fucking kids compared to what you're doing, because what you're doing is pitiful. So yeah, he basically said, hey, if the money's right, I'll fight one of those guys. I said, interesting. That sounds like what Demetrius Johnson typically talks about with some of his pay, being how good he is, how many title defenses he has. Definitely a future Hall of Famer, without a doubt. And he's talking about finances. Then, days later, in the media scrum, they talked to Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt, the former bantamweight champion, now he's challenging again against TJ in the main event. He says the same thing, saying that he said multiple times. I only watched half of it, and I counted maybe 2 or 3 times. He said, yeah, we deserve more pay. We definitely deserve more pay. He said that he took the TJ fight. I don't know how true this is, but he took the TJ fight because I do know he had a significant back injury and he wasn't in full shape for the last fight, which he partially blames on the loss. But he says he took that fight because of financial reasons. He says that he was only making $200,000 when he fought for the belt. When he fought Dominic Cruz, again, at the time was a top 5 pound-for-pound fighter in the world and dominated him. He was fighting for $200,000. It's absolutely ridiculous for the best in the business to make that sort of money. And then they don't have sponsorships anymore because the Reebok situation. It just goes on and on, man. And it's just maybe this fans are hearing stuff like this and they're getting less drawn to the UFC because they know that the fighters are getting treated like garbage, and some of the fans, there's a new theory for you right there. Because honestly, it turns me off a little bit. I'm still going to buy that pay-per-view because I want those guys to make more money, even though I know what I contribute is nothing, but it's something. But there you go. There's a theory. Maybe fans are getting turned off because the business is an absolute fucking mess. I'm trying to stop cursing, but that was really hard. That was really hard not to curse and be upset about. Max Holloway saying that he's confident he'll fight before the end of the year. I hope not, man. Honestly, he's so young. He's 26 years old. I hope he doesn't fight for a little while. UFC strips him whatever. That's minuscule for that guy's health, whatever. But he's a fighter, man. Of course he's going to want to get in there. Alexander Hernandez, forgot to mention him earlier. He fought Mercier, OAM, dominant performance. Shout out to that guy. He's a stud. Won't pick against him again in a long time. I feel bad for picking against him. but OEM's such a stud. And I really think that's it. It's been fairly quiet. It's been pretty anticlimactic, following UFC in Calgary. And really this whole fight week has been quiet. One of the things that I really like doing these podcasts a little later in the week, it's Thursday instead of doing it on a Monday. So much happens in a fight week to where if I record on Monday, it could be completely irrelevant. So, yeah, another reason why I'm kind of slowly starting to delay recording, but I think the latest will be Wednesday, Thursday time frame. Hopefully this gets out to you guys tonight, if not tomorrow for sure. And then I guess now let's just get into UFC 227. Do you hear how excited I am right now? Because it's not very much. Like, my voice just cracked. Like, I'm sad about this. I'm sad about this card, man. UFC had a big opportunity to do something good in LA, which they usually put on good fights in LA. And the main event and the co-main are really good. The rest of the card, honestly, could not... Oh, one more thing. Sorry, back to current events. I'm so sorry, Paul Tyler. Paul Tyler, he's the CEO, president, HMFIC of not the last bare knuckle organization that I interviewed, but this is World Bare Knuckle Fighting Federation. Yeah, World Bare Knuckle Fighting Federation, that's it. So Paul Tyler hooked me up with the original guy, Dave Feldman. They did their thing. It didn't work out for whatever reasons. I don't want to give the whole story because Paul's going to be on here next week. That guy is signing huge fighters. He signed Chris Lieben, and then I talked to him on Sunday, and we talked a little bit about it. He was a little hesitant to break any news or whatever, and I told my team, I said, hey, stay peeled to your TVs come Monday or Tuesday. And then, today's Wednesday, and it hits ESPN. They signed Sean Merriman, the former Hall of Fame linebacker in the NFL. They signed him. So they've signed Lieben, Phil Baroni, now Sean Merriman, Melvin Gillard. Dude, the list goes on. They're putting on some serious fighters. Nothing but respect for what they're doing right now. So he's going to be on next week, and then I'm going to have on some of his fighters and all of that on the podcast. So looking forward to it. Shout out to Paul. So now let's get into UFC 227. Now I'm sad again about this card. Let's just look at what these fights are, man. It's just sad. I tell you what, the exclusive Fight Pass prelims, which I do pay for, paying customer, not a streamer. The headliner of that, Alex Perez versus Jose Shorty Torres, is a really good fight. So if you remember, Shorty Torres came over to the UFC. He is the former two-time world champion over in Titan, and then now came over to the UFC. Won by knockout. It was a weird one because his opponent slammed him in his last fight, and then his opponent landed on his own head, so knocked himself out, really. So it was a weird win. And then Alex Perez, man, he's a fun guy to watch. I like Jose Torres, but I'm going to take Alex Perez. I like Alex Perez, too. I think he's just more of a grinder, and I think his kickboxing gets it done. So I'll take him via decision. Looking at the prelims on FS1, I mean, Pedro Munoz versus Brett Johns, that's a good fight. I guess if I had to take one, I would take Brett Johns, but I'm not super pumped about that fight. Really? And then, God, I can't, this is a fight on a pay-per-view. Poliana Viana versus JJ Aldridge. You ever heard of him? I've heard of JJ. I've seen her fight once, and it wasn't good. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll take Poliana Viana. I guess, whatever. And then the last three fights, all right, they're decent. I was saying last two earlier. Cub Swanson, he's number 5 featherweight in the world, and Renato Moicano, number 9. Man, Cub's had a rough go, with the loss to Brian Ortega, and then the loss to Frankie Edgar. He's ranked number 5 in the world, but that guy needs a win more than anyone. That guy needs a win more than Demi Lovato right now, and that's saying something. So Man, I love Cub, but I've also said that Renato Moicano. I actually think I called this a few months ago when Moicano won his last fight. Everyone was picking Moicano out. I said, man, you guys are sleeping on this guy, and he was a fair underdog, but he ended up getting it done. Man, this is a tough one to pick. My heart says Cub, but I got to go with my brain, and I think Moicano gets it done. And it hurts me to say that. But, I mean, you look at Moicano's resume, man. I mean, he's got some really, really good wins. You know, he beat Calvin Kattar, and then before that, the loss to Brian Ortega, but he also beat Jeremy Stevens. MMA math doesn't always add up, but he's got some really good wins. So I feel bad to say this, but I'll take Moicano in that one. Then co-main event, Demetrious Johnson, greatest of all time, versus Henry Cejudo. Not a lot to get into in my brain. I think that the first fight, they fought before, and DJ knocked him out. It was surprising because Cejudo did get DJ down, but he's an Olympic, gold medalist. Of course, he's going to have some success. Cejudo's changed up his stand-up a little bit. Now he stands in that. He knocked out Wilson Hayes in that weird side-to-side karate stance, which was very weird to see a wrestler come out like that, a known, very successful wrestler. But I'll never pick DJ to lose. Even if against TJ or Cody at 125, I don't care. I'll never pick Demetrious Johnson to lose. He is, without a doubt, the greatest fighter of all time. And we're going to miss that guy when he's gone. I'm telling you that right now. I don't think he has too many fights in front of him. I don't think he has too many fights left. But I'm telling you, after that guy's gone, the hardcore fans and the casuals are going to look back and say, yeah, we should have paid more attention. And then main event, TJ Dillashaw versus Cody Garbrandt. Another rematch. The first fight, Cody knocked TJ down at the end of the first round. And Cody came out a little bit flat-footed. He blames it on his cardio because he didn't have a full camp and the injury. And TJ, first lands a big head kick, drops Cody. A minute and a half goes by. They get an exchange. And if you look at that exchange, either one of those guys could have went down to the mat. I mean, Cody was inches away from landing that shot on TJ, but TJ just beat him, no pun intended, beat him to the punch, and eventually knocked him out from that strike. So I usually don't believe a lot of the I was injured. Look, every fighter goes in injured. I'm sure you were injured. I believe it this time, though, man. I really do believe it. Cody's injuries are very well documented. But in this fight, TJ has he has more tools. He has more ways to win. I think their wrestling really cancels each other out. I think we might see TJ shoot on Cody, but I think that Cody gets right back up. His anti-wrestling is outstanding. So I think they cancel each other out there. So now you just bring it to footwork. TJ's got the edge there. Cody's footwork is outstanding, but TJ's is some of the best that you'll ever see in the game. So I give TJ the edge there. Then you have ways to win as far as their tools, and I think TJ has more tools. TJ there. And then you have raw power, and it's close, slight edge to Cody in my mind. So it's that 3-1 for TJ Dillashaw, but I still think Cody gets it done. I love TJ. I love both guys, man. I didn't like Cody coming into the first fight, but after that loss, if you really look at their interactions, TJ's being a bit of a dick. And fair enough, because when he lost his title, Dominic Cruz, in a very close fight, he had to go through the ringer to get a title shot. And that ended up being against Cody. And then Cody loses via knockout and gets an immediate rematch when he never defended his title. So, okay, I get it. I get TJ's a little salty. I get TJ's pissed. I'm not mad if either one of these guys win. If TJ wins and he goes up 2-0 in this rivalry, rivalry's over, pending some, comeback from Cody. to make this more legitimate. So good for TJ. I'm a fan of his. If Cody wins, that means a trilogy. So I'm happy with that too. I would love this to see it be a trilogy eventually. Now, if it is a trilogy, then some of those bantamweights like Marlon Moraes, Jimmy Rivera, if he can get back in there and get a win, those guys that are potential contenders or really could fight for the belt right now if this rivalry, didn't go back years, could be fighting for the belt right now. But, if this does happen, it'll be a rivalry if Cody wins. If TJ wins, look, close the book, give another guy a shot. Cody, he'll be back young, strong, and, Cody's so damn young that he's going to be a world champ again. But in that fight, I'm taking Cody, man. I think that he plays it smarter. I don't think that he gets flat-footed because he does have a full camp. And, man, I'll take Cody. Late 4th, 5th round KO. Really. Maybe a decision. Maybe he does the Dominic Cruz thing. But I think TJ probably has some success in the second round once he gets dialed in. But TJ has a history of getting extremely frustrated when his game plan doesn't work. I think the first round will be a lot of the same of the first fight with Cody really controlling it, landing more strikes. I think TJ has some success in the second and third. But I think Cody, his coaches in his corner are way too intelligent, and they've watched TJ and trained with him for such a long time that they'll figure out how to nullify that. TJ will get frustrated, let go of the game plan a little bit, and then Cody starts putting it on him. So that's my pick for that one. So that covers UFC Calgary, covers current events. Shout out to Paul Tyler, and then Bare Knuckle Fighting Federation. Yeah, covers UFC 227 in LA at the Staples Center. So hopefully you guys enjoy the fights. Until next time, guys, be good to each other.